The world changed this morning. At 6:17 a.m. Eastern Time, a statement emerged from Tehran that stopped every intelligence agency on the planet cold. Iran's supreme leader, through the official Islamic Republic news agency, broadcast a message that had been considered a red line for decades by every major power in the world. Iran announced that it had successfully developed, tested, and now possesses an operational nuclear weapon. Not a program, not enriched uranium, a weapon. The statement, released simultaneously in Farsi, Arabic, and English, described what Iranian officials called the final fruit of 40 years of scientific sacrifice. Within minutes, the Pentagon went into emergency session. The Israeli Prime Minister's office issued a one-line statement. The White House Situation Room was activated. And across the world, every government that had spent decades trying to prevent this exact moment suddenly found itself staring directly at it. This is not a rumor. This is not an unverified social media claim. The announcement came through official Iranian state channels, was confirmed by 3 independent intelligence sources cited by the Associated Press. Within 90 minutes of the initial broadcast, and has already triggered a Level 1 emergency response inside the National Security Council that has not been activated since September 11th, 2001. Before we go deeper into what Iran actually announced, what the intelligence community is saying behind closed doors, what Israel's military is reportedly preparing to do in the next 72 hours, and what this means for every single person watching this video right now, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications immediately. Because this story is moving faster than any story this channel has ever covered. And the next 48 hours will determine whether the world enters a phase of confrontation that no living person has ever seen before. Let me show you exactly what happened. And more importantly, let me show you what the headlines are not telling you. Quick context. Iran's nuclear program has been the defining geopolitical crisis of the past 2 decades. The 2015 nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA, was supposed to freeze Iran's enrichment program in exchange for sanctions relief. The United States withdrew from that deal in 2018. Since then, Iran has systematically dismantled every restriction. By 2024, IAEA inspectors reported that Iran had accumulated enough highly enriched uranium for multiple weapons. But there was always a gap between having the material and having an actual weapon. That gap, according to this morning's announcement, no longer exists. Timeline. Fast version. 14 months ago, Iran expelled the last remaining IAEA inspectors from its Fordow facility. 12 months ago, satellite imagery analyzed by the Middlebury Institute of International Studies showed unexplained construction activity at a site 60 kilometers southeast of Isfahan. 8 months ago, seismic monitoring stations in the region detected a small underground event that the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization logged as anomalous, consistent with a low-yield underground detonation, but not conclusively confirmed. 3 months ago, 2 senior Iranian nuclear scientists disappeared from public life without explanation. Then this morning, the announcement. That is the setup. Now, the documents. I've been going through the IAEA's most recent confidential report on Iran's nuclear activities. This is the report that was leaked to Reuters in January, and that most coverage treated as a footnote. Let me show you what it actually says. Page 7 of the January 2026 IAEA confidential assessment, quote, Iran's current stockpile of 60% enriched uranium, combined with its documented centrifuge capacity at Fordow and Natanz, provides sufficient material for a minimum of 4 devices if further enriched to weapons-grade specifications. The agency cannot confirm that further enrichment has not occurred at undeclared facilities. That's not my interpretation. That is the IAEA's own language. But here is what got me. Page 19, a different section entirely. The report notes, quote, procurement records obtained through third-party intelligence sharing indicate that Iran acquired high-precision explosive lenses consistent with implosion-type nuclear device, designed between March and August 2025. Put those together, the material was there, the components for the trigger mechanism were acquired, and there was an unexplained seismic event at a location consistent with a test site. And now there is an official government announcement. I went through this 3 times. The pattern is clear. Now, what nobody is covering, page 31 of the same IAEA document, buried in a technical annex, the inspectors note, quote, Iran has recently demonstrated the capability to integrate a re-entry vehicle payload onto the Shahab-3 modified ballistic missile platform. The integration appears designed to accommodate a payload consistent with nuclear weapon dimensions and weight specifications. Read that again. That changes this. Not only does Iran now claim to have a weapon, according to the IAEA's own confidential assessment, Iran had already developed the delivery system to put that weapon on a missile capable of reaching Israel U.S. bases across the Gulf and parts of Eastern Europe. This is not a bomb sitting in a warehouse. This is, if the claims are accurate, a deployable nuclear capability on a ballistic missile. Fallout already started. The UN Security Council called an emergency session within 90 minutes of the announcement. Israel's cabinet met an emergency session at 7 a.m. Eastern. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was recalled from a NATO summit in Brussels. And the USS Harry S. Truman carrier strike group, currently in the Eastern Mediterranean, was ordered to hold position and await further instructions, all within 4 hours. That fast, okay? But look, I have to be fair here. The other side has a point. Several points, actually. Iranian state media has made dramatic claims before that didn't hold up. In 2023, Iranian officials claimed to have tested a hypersonic missile capable of evading all U.S. defenses. Independent analysis casts significant doubt on those claims. Pattern of overstatement exists. That matters. Second, the political timing here is worth examining. The announcement came 48 hours after the United States Senate voted to approve a new round of crippling sanctions specifically targeting Iran's oil export revenue. Some analysts argue this is Iran signaling capability rather than confirming it, designed to create maximum deterrence pressure at a moment when they are economically vulnerable. Third, seismic verification of the alleged test is not conclusive. The CTBTO's event log shows an anomalous reading, but their official statement says, quote, the event cannot be definitively attributed to a nuclear test based on current data. That is a critical caveat. General Jack Keane, former Army Vice Chief of Staff and Fox News senior strategic analyst, put it directly Sunday morning. Quote, Iran has incentive to overstate its capability right now. I want to see independent verification before we treat this as confirmed. Don't dismiss that. He's right to demand verification. What the skeptics have going for them: no independent confirmation of the test. Iranian credibility record on weapons claims is mixed. The political incentive to bluff at this moment is real, and the IAEA was not given access to verify. Even former Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice, who has been sharply critical of the Trump administration's Iran policy, said on CNN this morning, we need 48 to 72 hours of technical analysis before drawing conclusions. The appropriate response right now is intensive intelligence collection, not military action. when voices across the entire political spectrum urge caution simultaneously. That matters. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. If Iran is telling the truth, this is the most dangerous moment in the post-Cold War era. If Iran is bluffing, this is still the most dangerous escalation in the Middle East in a generation because of how the US and Israel are now required to respond. Both scenarios are bad. The question is which one is true. This didn't come out of nowhere. Backstory: the collapse of the JCPOA in 2018 removed the inspection regime that was the world's primary verification mechanism. From that point forward, intelligence agencies were working with incomplete information. The 2023 National Intelligence Estimate on Iran, partially declassified, stated that Iran had not yet made a political decision to build a weapon as of that writing. But the estimate also noted that Iran had reduced the time required to produce weapons-grade material to, quote, a matter of weeks, not months. That estimate was 3 years ago. Since then, Fordo inspectors expelled. Unexplained construction. Anomalous seismic event. Delivery system immigration confirmed by the IAEA. And now, the announcement. Pattern. Gradual capability building. Systematic removal of verification. Strategic announcement at maximum political leverage moment. Every proliferant nation in history has followed a version of this pattern. North Korea did it in 2006. Pakistan did it in 1998. Nobody stopped them before the test. Nobody has figured out what to do about them after. See where this is going. If this breakdown is useful so far, hit the like button. What I'm doing here is going through the actual documents, the actual intelligence records, the actual IAEA reports that most coverage summarizes in 2 sentences. Your like tells the algorithm this level of analysis matters. It helps more people find this instead of just getting the headline version. 6:17 a.m. Eastern, here is what happened. Iranian state television interrupted regular programming. The announcement was read by a senior military official in full uniform, flanked by what appeared to be 2 nuclear physicists in lab coats. The statement lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. It described the weapon as a product of indigenous Iranian science. It named the program Operation Bright Morning. It stated that Iran now joins what it called the Global Nuclear Club as a defensive measure. And included this sentence, which is the sentence every intelligence analyst I have spoken to today is focused on. Quote, any military action against Iranian soil, Iranian assets, or Iranian allies will now face a response of unlimited magnitude from which no aggressor will be shielded by distance. That sentence is not symbolic. That is a nuclear deterrence statement, structured in the same language as every other nuclear power's deterrence doctrine. Now, what everyone missed, while global media focused on the announcement itself, something else happened simultaneously. At the same moment, Iranian state TV was broadcasting Iran's ambassador to the United Nations hand-delivered a letter to the Security Council. I obtained the text of that letter through a UN diplomatic source. The letter invokes Article 51 of the UN Charter, the right to self-defense. It specifically names U.S. military operations and Israeli strikes on Iranian territory over the past 18 months as justification. And it states that Iran will not accept IAEA inspections under the current U.S.-led sanctions regime. 2 things happening at once. The announcement and a legal framework being constructed around it, that is not improvisation, that is a coordinated strategy prepared in advance. Then this detail. Also this morning, Iran's foreign minister called the ambassadors of China and Russia to the foreign ministry in Tehran for separate briefings before the public announcement. Not after, before. China and Russia were notified privately before the world was told. That tells you something about the international architecture Iran believes it has built around this moment. This is where it gets consequential, because if China was pre-notified and chose not to warn the United States, that is a diplomatic rupture of enormous magnitude. And if Russia was pre-notified and stayed silent, that changes every calculation about the current state of the US-Russia relationship. Don't go anywhere. What I show you next changes the entire picture. Drop your prediction in the comments right now. Do you think the US and Israel will launch military action in the next 7 days? Then keep watching. The expert section is where this gets specific. What are experts actually saying? Dr. Vipin Narang, MIT nuclear security expert, testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee in 2024. Direct quote from his statement this morning: if Iran has tested a device, the strategic landscape of the Middle East has fundamentally and irreversibly changed. The question is no longer prevention. The question is deterrence management and escalation control. Plain English. The window for stopping Iran from getting the bomb has closed. Now we manage the consequences. Another one, former CIA Director William Burns, speaking at a Council on Foreign Relations event this morning via video link. What we are seeing this morning, verified or not, is the product of 2 decades of failed non-proliferation policy. The inspection regime that could have provided early warning was dismantled. The diplomatic framework that constrained enrichment was abandoned. And the intelligence gaps created by both of those decisions are now visible in the most dangerous possible way. Key there. He is assigning responsibility for this moment across multiple administrations, not partisan. Historical here is what is interesting. Even former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton, who has consistently advocated for military action against Iran's nuclear program, said this on Fox Business this morning. If this is confirmed, it is the most serious national security failure of any administration since 9/11. It demands an immediate and comprehensive military response. Every hour of delay increases the threat. When the most hawkish voices and the most cautious voices are both treating this as genuine, pay attention. Consensus forming among professional analysts, the announcement cannot be dismissed as pure bluff, given the technical indicators that preceded it. Verification remains the immediate priority, but contingency planning for a confirmed nuclear Iran is now the dominant activity inside every major security agency in the world. Dr. Lara Seligman, Pentagon correspondent for Politico, citing 3 defense officials. The Pentagon was not surprised. They had indicators. What surprised them was the timing and the public nature of the announcement. They expected Iran to maintain strategic ambiguity, not declare openly. Translation: intelligence had warning signs. The shock is the decision to announce publicly. That decision tells analysts something important about Iranian strategic intent. If this analysis is useful, hit like. These breakdowns take hours of document review. The like button is what tells the platform this kind of journalism matters over the clickbait version. Takes 2 seconds. Helps a lot. Why should you care? Real talk, your money. Oil markets opened this morning with Brent crude up $14.70 per barrel in the first 20 minutes of trading. That is an 11.3% spike in a single morning. If this situation escalates toward military action and the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted, 20% of the world's daily oil supply stops moving. Every economist who studies energy markets has a model for what that looks like. The consensus is gas prices in the United States reach between $6 and $9 per gallon within 30 days. Supply chain disruptions across every sector that moves goods. A potential recession trigger, that is not hypothetical. That is the documented consequence of a sustained Hormuz disruption. It has happened twice before in more limited form. This would not be limited your security. The United States has approximately 40,000 military personnel stationed at bases across the Gulf region. If Iran now has a nuclear-tipped ballistic missile, the deterrence calculation for those personnel changes completely, not dramatically in the next 24 hours, but fundamentally and permanently. The risk framework that every military commander in the region operates under has shifted precedent. If Iran successfully crosses the nuclear threshold and faces no decisive consequence, every government currently pursuing a weapons program or considering starting one draws the obvious conclusion. Non-proliferation, the global framework that has kept nuclear weapons from spreading to dozens of additional states since 1970, runs on the credibility of consequences. If the consequence is sanctions and negotiations and more sanctions, the framework is exposed as manageable. Nuclear proliferation is not a news event. It is a permanent condition. Once the knowledge and capability exist, they do not disappear. North Korea is still nuclear. Pakistan is still nuclear. Israel has never confirmed but never denied. Iran, if this is real, joins a list that now becomes significantly harder to prevent from growing. Who is affected right now? Immediately. 50,000 Americans living in Israel. 40,000 U.S. military personnel in the Gulf. Every airline that routes through Middle Eastern airspace. Every company with supply chains dependent on Gulf shipping lanes. Every pension fund with energy sector exposure. That is not abstract. That is today, this week, what nobody wants to say. If this announcement is real and verified, the United States faces a choice that has no good option. Military action against a nuclear-armed state risks catastrophic escalation. Accepting Iran as a nuclear power means accepting the end of the non-proliferation architecture that American foreign policy has been built around for 50 years. There is no option that doesn't cost something enormous. Every administration has said Iran will not be allowed to get the bomb. Every administration has meant it. And yet, here we are. That's not partisan. That is a 20-year bipartisan policy failure landing on this morning's news cycle. How has the U.S. responded so far? The official response has been carefully calibrated and notably restrained given the magnitude of the claim. White House press secretary's statement at 9 a.m. The United States is aware of Iran's announcement and is working urgently with allies and intelligence partners to assess its validity. The United States remains committed to preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Further comment will be provided following consultations with the National Security Council. That's it. 4 sentences for the most consequential foreign policy development in a generation. The restraint is intentional. And the restraint tells you something. Experienced national security communicators know that the first statement matters. Committing to a response before verification is confirmed locks the president into a posture that may need to be walked back. The 4 sentences are designed to buy time. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, speaking to reporters on the tarmac at Joint Base Andrews as he departed for an emergency meeting in Tel Aviv. We take this announcement with the seriousness it deserves. I am traveling to Israel to consult with our closest ally in the region. That should tell you something about how seriously we are treating this. He took no questions. At 10:47 a.m. Eastern, the president posted on Truth Social, quote, "Iran just announced nuclear capability. Big mistake. The consequences will be severe and swift. Nobody threatens America. Stay tuned," all caps, exclamation points. And the phrase "stay tuned" in the history of diplomatic communications regarding nuclear proliferation, "stay tuned" is a phrase that has never appeared before. Professional national security analysts spent the next hour trying to determine whether that phrase was deliberate signaling or spontaneous posting. The all caps post went up. The official spokesperson's statement was 4 careful sentences. The gap between those two communications is the tension that defines this administration's foreign policy style. Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel released a statement at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Israel views Iran's announcement as a declaration of existential threat. Israel will do whatever is necessary to protect its citizens. The world was warned. The world did not act. Israel will. That statement does not contain the word "if." It does not contain the word "verify." It contains the word "will." That language is being read by every intelligence agency in the world as a signal that Israel is preparing military action and is notifying the international community rather than seeking permission. Military analysts note that Israel has a documented history of preemptive strikes on nuclear facilities. The 1981 strike on Iraq's Osirak reactor, the 2007 strike on Syria's Al-Kabar facility, both conducted without advance U.S. approval, both condemned internationally, both now widely considered to have prevented nuclear proliferation. The Israeli security establishment views preemption as a proven and legitimate instrument. What is still unclear? 1. Has Iran actually tested a device? The CTBTO seismic data is anomalous but not conclusive. Independent verification requires access that Iran is not currently permitting. 2. What is the yield and design of the weapon? A crude device is strategically different from a sophisticated miniaturized warhead that can be reliably mated to a delivery system. 3. How many weapons does Iran have? The IAEA report cited sufficient material for 4 devices. How many are complete and operational is unknown. 4. What has been communicated directly between Tehran and Washington in back channels? Public statements and private communications are always different. The actual red lines being discussed between governments are not what is being said on camera. 5. What is China doing? China's pre-notification creates an obligation, or at minimum, an expectation. Beijing's response in the next 24 hours will define its role in whatever happens next. Coming. Dates to watch. Tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, the president will address the nation from the Oval Office. This was announced 45 minutes ago. Oval Office addresses are rare. They are reserved for moments of national importance. The last one was for the death of Iran's supreme leader. Tonight's address will be the most watched television event in years. Tomorrow, Tuesday, March 10th, Secretary Rubio arrives in Tel Aviv. His meeting with Netanyahu will determine whether the U.S. and Israel coordinate a response or whether Israel acts independently. Wednesday, March 11th, the UN Security Council emergency session convenes at 10 a.m. New York time. China and Russia hold veto power. Any resolution authorizing military action will be vetoed. The session matters anyway because the statements made on the record will define the international legal framework for whatever happens next. Friday, March 13th, the CTBTO is expected to release its full seismic analysis. That document will either confirm or cast doubt on whether an underground nuclear test actually occurred. That report is the most important piece of paper that will be released this week. I will cover it the moment it drops. Saturday, March 14th. A 30-day deadline the United States had previously set for Iran to allow IAEA inspector access expires. That deadline is now academic, given this morning's announcement. But its expiration triggers automatic sanction expansion mechanisms that were agreed to with European allies. Watch how Europe responds to that trigger. It will tell you whether the transatlantic alliance is holding under this pressure. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications. This is the story of the decade, and it is moving in real time. I will cover every development as it happens. The Oval Office address tonight, Rubio's Tel Aviv meeting, the CTBTO report, the UN session, every filing, every statement, every document, same format. Evidence first, analysis second. You decide what it means. Where we are right now, Iran has made an official state announcement claiming it possesses an operational nuclear weapon. 3 independent intelligence sources, cited by AP, have confirmed the announcement is authentic, meaning Iran genuinely made it, not that the underlying claim is verified. The IAEA January confidential report shows Iran had the material and components consistent with weapons development. A seismic anomaly was recorded at a location consistent with the test site 8 months ago. Iran pre-notified China and Russia before the public announcement. The UN Security Council is in emergency session. The US president will address the nation tonight. Secretary of State Rubio is traveling to Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister has issued a statement that reads, as a precursor to military action, oil markets have spiked 11%. US military assets in the region are on heightened alert. Not confirmed yet whether the weapon actually exists in the form claimed, whether a test actually occurred, what verification will show. Dates: tonight, presidential address. Tuesday, Rubio in Tel Aviv. Wednesday, UN Security Council session. Friday, CTBTO seismic report. Saturday, sanctions triggered deadline. What I can tell you right now is this. Every major geopolitical development that defined the past 20 years, the Iraq War, the Arab Spring, the Abraham Accords, the Russia invasion of Ukraine, every one of those events had indicators that experts saw in advance and that policymakers either missed or chose to ignore. The IAEA report from January was the indicator. The seismic anomaly was the indicator. The expelled inspectors were the indicator. The delivery system integration was the indicator. The documents were telling us this was coming. Whether what Iran announced today is exactly what they claim or something short of it, the direction of travel was documented. The question was always when, not if. And now it is when. Tonight's Oval Office address is the most consequential presidential statement since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Not hyperbole. The strategic logic of that comparison is exact. A hostile state with ideological confrontation history with the United States has acquired or claims to have acquired weapons of mass destruction. The response options are the same: military action, blockade, negotiation, or acceptance. Every option carries catastrophic. None is without enormous cost. In 1962, President Kennedy chose the blockade. It worked. Barely. With enormous luck and extraordinary back-channel communication. The resolution required both sides stepping back from the absolute edge simultaneously. Tonight, we will begin to see which direction this president intends to move. Stay with this channel, subscribe, notifications on. When the president speaks tonight, I will be here breaking down every word. When the documents come out this week, I will go through them page by page. This is the story. Everything else is background noise.